Good evening, everyone. Om Gyanantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitamina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So we're gonna be covering the passage, chapter 8, Bhagavad-gita, verses 5 through 10. But we'll probably just cover half the passage because it's a little bit long. So in the beginning of chapter 8, Arjuna asked Krishna 7 questions based on some of Krishna's statements in the previous chapter. 7 questions they were based on some technical terms that Krishna mentioned in the last part of chapter 7. What is Brahman? What is Adhyatman? What is karma? What is Adibhuta, Adidhaiva, Adiyagya? And how can one remember you at the time of death? Those are the 7 questions that Arjuna asked Krishna at the beginning of the chapter. So in last class, we covered the first 6 questions, where Krishna gave answers to those technical terms. Now in this passage, Krishna is answering the 7th question. So how can one know you at the time of death? So this question is being answered now. So this is verse 5. Antakale chamam eva smaram muktva kalevaram. Ya prayati samat bhavam yati nastyatra sankshayah. So antakale means at the end of one's life. Muktva kalevaram, when one is giving up one's body. Mam eva smaram, one should certainly remember me. So basically the question is, how can someone know you at the time of death? Krishna said you should remember me. But remembering Krishna isn't a matter of just like, I know that guy named Krishna and then I just remember him at the time of death. It's not like, our acharyas say, it's not like knowing a book or knowing someone's name in this world. But to know Krishna means to know him in truth, to know him in reality. One of our devotees, anyway, 2 stories here, but one devotee I know, in his car, he had pictures of Krishna all over the car. So on the roof of the car, on the windowsill of the car, on every part of the car, he has some picture of Krishna. So this is my first year in India. I went to Mumbai. So everywhere there were pictures of Krishna. So I asked the devotee, I said, why do you have pictures? Radha Gopinath, those are the deities in Chowpatty, all over the car. So I asked him, why do you have pictures of the deities all over the car? Everywhere there were pictures of the deity. He said, in case there's some accident and the car is flipping over in this, wherever I look, I will see Krishna. And that way I will remember Krishna at the time of death. And I was like, I don't know if it really works like that. Another devotee, he told me, Brahmachari, he's from London, he got some malaria. Wow, a lot of noise is going on, a lot of action in the back. So one devotee caught malaria, so he was very, very sick, and at one point he thought he was going to die. So he had some Prabhupada japa playing in the background. He had pictures of the deities put all over his bed and so on. And in his own telling the story, he said, okay, I'm ready for this. I got this. And then he wasn't dying. So it was taking a long time to die, at least. And so the mind was thinking of so many other things. And then he realized that, okay, this is a lot more challenging than I thought it was going to be. Similarly, I shared this story before, I think in this class, when I was also my first year in India, in Mumbai. We went to Jagannath Rath Yatra. And then at the end of the Rath Yatra, myself and 2 other brahmacharis, we were returning to the temple. So we got one rickshaw. And if you know about driving in India, it is up to God. The way it is a miracle how anyone lives in that. The driving is just very crazy. There are stoplights, but that is just for show. No one actually follows that. Everyone just basically does whatever they want. So when you're moving around, it's quite scary. Especially when you're first year there, you'll see 2 cars like going right toward each other, almost like a face-off, like who's gonna move first, So like this is a little scary. In fact, I've heard devotees joke that this is the evidence that there's a God, that things are somehow managing. In any case, we were on a rickshaw going back to the temple, and there was one of these crazy incidents, and our rickshaw almost flipped over. It went on like the rickshaw had only three wheels, so it kind of like went on one wheel, and it was like literally to the side. So I was in the car with the two other brahmacharis. So I said a curse word. That was my remembrance. And the other devotee just started screaming, one of the devotees. Ah! And the other devotee was just silent, just like looking, not saying anything. So after the car, somehow by the grace of God, it came back down. So there was like a moment of silence as we were all analyzing the situation. And then one of the brahmacharis said, well, I guess we failed that test. And we had to go laugh because none of us thought of Krishna. I said a curse word, so I don't know what would have been my destination. And this devotee was just screaming, and he wasn't thinking of Krishna. And the other brahmachari, he said, he wasn't screaming, he was just looking. We said, what were you thinking? He said, I wasn't thinking of anything. I was just looking. So to remember Krishna at the time of death is not such an easy thing. That's the point I'm making, simple point. When Krishna says here in verse 5, Antakale chamam eva smaram mukta kalevanam, one who remembers me when they're quitting their body at the time of death, then to do that is not such an easy thing. That is the point that I'm making. Just like sometimes people think that I'll become spiritual when I'm 50 plus. And many times we would stop young people for the book distribution. They would say, I will get serious when I am 50 plus. That is the time for spiritual life. By 50 plus, you'll be so conditioned you'll not do anything. And certainly you'll not be able to remember Krishna. So anyone who's able to do this, Krishna says, Ya prayati samat bhavam, yati nastyatra samshaya. So anyone who's able to do this, Krishna says, he attains a nature like my own. Ya prayati samat bhavam. He goes or he attains a nature like my own. So Krishna's nature, we've heard a little bit so far in chapter 7. His nature is completely spiritual, transcendental. And so if you are able to think of Krishna at the time of death, then you'll attain a nature like Krishna. Madhava, you'll become completely spiritual, a spiritual body that is beyond the cycle of birth and death. So in other words, remember Krishna is a very extraordinary thing because it gives such an extraordinary fruit to attain a nature like Krishna. And he tells Arjuna he should not have any doubt about this. So in order to explain the principle of what it really means to think of Krishna, Krishna expands on this idea in the next several verses, up to verse 15. Otherwise, someone is thinking like this, yeah, I'll remember Krishna, what is the big deal? So in order to explain what is the big deal, so Krishna elaborates in the next set of verses. So this is verse 6, is also these are all pretty famous verses of the Bhagavad-gita. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajante kalevanam tam tam ivaiti konteya sadata bhava bhavita. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam. So whatever bhavam, whatever nature you are remembering when you quit the body, tyajante kalevanam. Tam tam, then you'll tam tam eva. You'll attain a nature just like that. Whatever it is that you're thinking of at the time of death, you will certainly attain a nature like that, smaram bhava. Sometimes this example is given of I think it's like a wasp who corners like a bee. It's a certain nyaya, I can't remember the name of the nyaya. Or anyway, the wasp like corners the bee, and the bee is so afraid of the wasp that he's completely absorbed in the wasp, right? Fixed absorption in the wasp at the time of death. You understand? Similarly, this example is given, I forget the name, I have to look it up. Anything you absorb your mind and you become like that. That's why we often, and I've seen this now used in this way also in the political arena, you see all the people, they hate each other, And they become exactly like the people that they hate because they're always meditating on them, always thinking of them, always talking about them. So their mind becomes so absorbed in that they become just like the people that they hate. If you meditate on evil, you'll become evil, actually. That is a principle. It's quite remarkable, actually. Also, later we'll hear in the first canto, the Bhagavatam, when the bull his legs are being beat by personified Kali Yuga. And Parikshit Maharaj comes to stop and he says, "Who has done this to you?" And the bull is saying, "Who can say?" He gets real philosophical. Who is really the cause of this thing? This is manifested, but what was the seed of this manifestation? He starts getting really philosophical. And then the king says, "You are spoken according to the principle that he who points out the wrongdoer suffers from the same or will attain the same result as the person that he's pointing out." So you point out a persecutor, you'll attain a similar result as the person you're pointing out. It's very interesting. And then the idea is just very simple. Whatever you absorb your meditation on, you become like that. Whatever nature you're meditating on. So what nature are you meditating on? Material nature or spiritual nature? I guess that's a rhetorical question, but you're meditating on spiritual nature or material nature? It depends. Huh? Mostly material. Okay. So it's not depends. It is clear. It's interesting. Prabhupada, in the introduction of this Bhagavad-gita, he quotes this section of Gita. And he says, it is for this reason that Vyasadeva has given the Vedas, given these spiritual literatures to give us an opportunity to think of the spiritual nature. The principle is whatever nature you meditate on, you shall become like that. So if you think of material nature, you'll get a position within material nature, this body or that body, as it were. And if you think of the spiritual nature, you'll get a nature like that. So how you will think of the spiritual nature? How is that possible to think of spiritual nature? It is not that anything that you feel is spiritual, which is the common notion today. If some feeling is inside, people feel that it's spiritual. How you would think of spiritual nature?
I think only way is to surround yourself with as much remembrance about that as possible.
Yes, and from where you will get information about that spiritual nature. Where does the teacher get that information from? From his, and where did his teacher get the information from?
Well, it's very long chain.
It's a very long chain, but finally, where does the first teacher get the information? From God. That is also okay. From Shastra, from the scripture, Apurusha Shabda. So for this reason, Prabhupada writes in the introduction of the Gita that Vyasadeva is given all these spiritual literatures to give us an opportunity to think of this spiritual nature. Sadata bhava bhavita. This is a basic principle. So whatever your mind is completely absorbed in, sadata bhava bhavita. So not like a casual remembrance, but what is it that the mind is actually completely absorbed in at the time? Then that state you will attain because of that fixed absorption. Sada means always. So you're always thinking of that. And so you attain that. You understand? It's just like when you have an infatuation, when people fall in love, so-called, and I'm in love. And they make some feeling and some song about it and so on. Then in that state of infatuation, they think only of that beloved. And everything they see reminds them of that beloved. They see some tree, that reminds me of the first tree, that. They see some store, oh, that store reminds me of. Whatever they see, they're reminded of the beloved. Of course, if there's breakup, then there's another sort of meditation comes. That is the way that works. But sadata bhava bhavita, whatever they're always absorbed in that state, they will attain with love. So that is the principle, you understand? So therefore, verse 7, tasmat, this is a very important verse. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmanan yudicha. Therefore, sarveshu kaleshu, at all times, mam anusmaram, you should remember me. Because the question was, how do I remember you at the time of death? That was the question. But Hare Krishna is saying, why only at the time of death? At all times you should remember me. Otherwise, how will it be possible to think of me at the time of death? You understand? How do you get absorbed in a particular nature? It is by the habit of remembering that thing, isn't it? Just like many of us have the habit of looking at something on YouTube, even without thinking. I've had this experience actually where I've opened the computer to check my email because I have to write some email to someone, and I'll just open and just go to go to YouTube, go to Facebook or something. And I was like, did I get bewildered? Like, why did I go here? Then I like completely forget that I had opened my computer to check my email because I have to write a letter. And then I'm like, why did I go here again? And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to go to my because by the habit of doing that, so my hand just open, just automatically goes in that direction. So unless you've created the habit of thinking of Krishna, then how you would think of him at the time of death? Your final thought is basically informed by your previous thoughts. So you cannot expect to have a life of thoughts about material nature, and the final thought will be of Krishna. Unless we have cultivated the habit of thinking about Krishna. And Prabhupada writes in the introduction also, because he referenced this section of Gita, it's very nice. He said, if we're not accustomed to think of Krishna while we're struggling for existence in this world, then we will not think of Krishna at the time of death. So unless we have cultivated the habit of thinking of Krishna, then you cannot think of Krishna at the time of death. Therefore, the person who says, when I am 50 plus, I'll start spiritual life, we say, if that time you'll be finished, there will be almost no hope for you. We don't say like that, but we think it sometimes. Because you have so many other thoughts that you've cultivated. Our whole mental world has been arrested. That's why in Vedic culture, we've been hearing this also in the Bhagavatam, Komara atret pragyo dharma bhagavataniha. From the very beginning, the child should be taught Bhagavad Dharma, taught to fill the mind with thoughts of divinity, thoughts of Krishna, so that he can practice that throughout his life, and there's a chance for him to remember Krishna at the time of death. But us, we grew up, learning all sorts of stupid things. Cat in the Hat. You also know Cat in the Hat? You also know Cat in the Hat. Where is Waldo? All this stupid stuff. We filled our Pippi Longstocking, Chronicles of Narnia, comic books. And then, when we hit puberty, it goes in another direction. And so our mind is filled with all these horrible impressions. And then you become a devotee. But we're dealing with all these nightmarish impressions that we've had the habit of thinking in our life before devotion. And sometimes just out of habit, just like, again, same example. I'm chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But when the car was about to flip over, I said a curse word. I'm not going to say which curse word I said, but a curse word came out. Because I had the habit of responding to life situations that were dangerous with a curse word. So because I had the habit, it was very automatic. God, whatever I said, some word was spoken that wasn't spiritual, wasn't Krishna. Because of the habit of doing that. I didn't have the habit of saying Krishna when in a dangerous situation. You understand? So therefore, Krishna says, Tasma sarveshu kaleshu mama nusmara. If you want any chance of any hope of remembering at the time of death, you have to practice throughout your life. Sarveshu kaleshu, at all times you should remember me. So Arjuna may find that appealing and say, okay, I'll just do that only, and why I should fight in this war. So then Krishna said, Yuddha cha, and you also fight. You ain't getting out of this. Cha means also, and Yuddha, fight. So in other words, while fighting, you have to also think of me. Again, using Prabhupada's language, unless we're accustomed to think of Krishna while we're struggling for existence, we will not have the habit of thinking him at the time of death. One thing that I noticed, this is not a side point, but in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll discover that whenever the devotees are in danger, you'll see them like running to Krishna. And the first thing they say is Krishna, Krishna, Mahabhaga. There are many verses like this in the Bhagavatam, which means like Krishna, Krishna, oh, opulent one, or sometimes they use the word Mahayogin, oh, mystical one, or master of mystics. Just automatically, some dangers come, Krishna, Krishna, Mahayogin. Automatically. When I'm in danger, the Krishna word not coming out. So what will be my destination? I hope that I've eaten enough prasadam and chanted enough holy names that I don't have to worry about it too much. But this is Krishna's point. Mayarpito mano bhuder mame vaishyasis asanshaya. My arpito mano bhuder. With my and intelligence, arpita means like dedicated to me. So the mind is, the emotional space that makes the decision. I will think of Krishna. But because of the mind's flickering nature, you have to be very determined to go on thinking of Krishna. Starting with thinking of Krishna is not the problem. Going on thinking of Krishna, that is the problem. Even like today, I'll be quite honest with you. I was in the park, Washington Square Park, and I was chanting for a little bit, and then I started studying a little bit some prayers that I like. Then all of a sudden, I had this very demonic thought. I was like, I don't want to think of Krishna right now. It's like, again, the impressions of evil, just very demonic. I was like, I don't want to think of Krishna right now. So I stopped temporarily, and then my intelligence kicked in. Negro, better think of Krishna. You might die at any moment. And then again, I put my head in the bead bag. I didn't know what to do, so I just started putting my head in the bead bag and started chanting Hare Krishna. So the mind makes a decision to think of Krishna, but then you need the intelligence. Intelligence is what allows you to be determined. Otherwise, the mind will stop at any moment. Just like I haven't gone in the gym for a few weeks, so I started going again to the gym. But when you take off so long, and then again you go after 1-2 exercises, the soreness is like intense. So the mind is like, all right, enough. But then the intelligence, who is ascertained that this is good for you, then it becomes determined. No, you must continue. So therefore, my arpito mano buddhi. Therefore, manas and buddhi should be dedicated to me. In other words, if you're going to be successful in this culture of thinking of Krishna, then you have to dedicate the mind and intelligence. Again, the mind allows you, okay, I will do this. And then the intelligence be determined, not allowing the mind to deviate from that purpose. You understand? Eva, Ishasi, Asanksha. Certainly you will attain me if you do like this. So next verse, very nice. Abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasa na anya ghamina. Paramam purusham devyam yati parta anuchintaya. So in this way, abhyasa yoga yuktena, by this engagement in abhyasa yoga. Abhyasa means practice. Abhyasa yoga, the yoga of practice. So what is the practice? The practice of remembering Krishna. That is the practice. Chaitasa na anya gamina. But a mind, chaitasa, na anya gamina, that knows no other. That is a practice. So there are many other cherished thoughts even that we have are, isn't it? Some of us have, especially that fantasy world. We all have struggled with this fantasizing, imagination, isn't it? Isn't it? One imagines himself with a romantic partner that's just perfect for you. So much illusion, as if such a creature exists. You imagine like that, isn't it? And you imagine I'll be very successful finance person, make lots of money. Of course, give 50% to Krishna. I've heard that from so many devotees. When I make money, I will give 50% to Krishna. You're all right. Of course you will in your imagination. Everything is possible there. So much imagination is going on. So we have like cherished thoughts. Externally, we are chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Internally, the thought bubble. And then so many other ideas are there. So abhyasa yoga means you practice remembering Krishna, and you say, "What is this nonsense thought?" Close the blinds on that thought. Close the window. Knock out the what do they call it? Yeah, the thought bubble. So you Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, the thought bubble is coming. Get out of here. None of that other thought. Na anya gamina. Chaitasa na anya gamina means not having other thoughts. That means gradual. Just hearing that can be a little bit like. I see Travis over there, just like. I couldn't even do it because it's funny. You're just like you look like crestfallen. Game over before it even started. Yes, it most certainly feels like that. But if we do more and more bhakti, especially in the form of remembering Krishna ideas, that it will increase its influence. Again, we have to understand that just our thinking of other thoughts so profoundly is only because of the habit of thinking of those thoughts. If we hadn't cultivated the habit, it wouldn't be so strong. So in the same way, if we cultivate the habit of thinking of Krishna, it can also become very powerful. It's just a matter of making a habit out of it. So this is the difficulty. If you do like that, Paramam Purusham Devyam Yati, then you'll attain the Supreme Purusha, who is transcendental. You'll attain Krishna. Partha Anuchintayam, because you always think of him. So this is the struggle. The struggle is the struggle to win back our mind for the purpose of Krishna. This is the actual war that's going on. Everyone's fighting war externally, politics, but that war is useless at the end of the day because everyone will die. And mostly everyone will be going to hell also. Even though they made very nice YouTube videos making this point and that point. But at the end, what do they get for all their hard work? They'll get death. And maybe in the next life, they'll become the people that they hate, actually. They'll get training in that other side, next life. So we have the real battle is inside, winning back our mind for the purpose of Krishna consciousness. So Krishna gives two. So how is one to think of Krishna? These are the last two verses I'll cover. So he gives one verse that just describes his transcendence. Again, one has to know Krishna in truth, not just like, yeah, I have a friend named Krishna and you think of him, or whether you should know Krishna in truth. What is that verse? Jaman karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatata. Tatata means you should know Krishna in truth. Tattva. So he speaks one verse describing his nature. Just very quickly, he says, Kavim, he's omniscient. Puranam, he's the oldest. Because when you're eternal, you have no beginning. So Puranam, the oldest. Anushasitaram, he's the controller of the worlds. Anur Aniyangsam, he's smaller than the smallest. And Anusmaredya, and he is also, no, Anusmaredya means anyone who remembers this. Sarvashadhatanam, he is smaller than the smallest, and he is also the container of everything at the same time. So it is very bewildering to understand. How can someone be the smaller than the smallest and at the same time the container of everything? So therefore the next verse says Achinta Rupam, because his Rupa is Achintya, is inconceivable. Just like, well, we don't have any picture here, but Krishna and Mother Jasoda, so many pastimes where he eats dirt one time and the friends tell on Krishna that he's eating dirt. So Mother Jasoda comes to chastise, why have you eaten dirt? He said, I have not eaten dirt. These people are lying on me because I defeated them in all the games today. So they're just telling some lie. And he said, I can prove it to you. Look inside my mouth and then you'll see I have not eaten dirt. So she said, let me see. So he opened his mouth and Mother Jasoda could see all the universes inside his mouth. Krishna showed her the universal form. And when she was looking inside, she looked a little, oh, that's me. She could see herself looking inside Krishna's mouth while she was looking inside Krishna's mouth. That's very, can you imagine? Like, I always, when I think about that, I'm like, well, that Jasoda who was inside, was she also looking like, yeah, it gets like confusing. So this is all Achintya Rupa, and this Achintya, you not be able to understand how it's possible. So how can someone be all-pervading, or excuse me, be smaller and smaller and at the same time pervade everything simultaneously? Or another question, how can something that is all-pervading move? Because something is all-pervading, that means they're hitting all the points already simultaneously. In order for you to move, you have to go from one point to another point. But if you already exist at all the points, then how could something that is all pervading move? How is that possible? So in this way, you'll not understand. No one can. This is achinta rupam. So his form is inconceivable. Aditya varnam. His form is just like the sun. Meaning it is self-luminous. Our forms are not self-luminous. We need some light in order for our form to be revealed to others. Just like many times when I give online class, I always tell the same joke, but sometimes I face the camera in the wrong way, and it just looks like a silhouette. I just look like I always say, an unlocked character in Mortal Kombat. Because you can't even see anything but just a silhouette, you know. I have black body, so sometimes people take a picture. I'm like, you gonna throw that flash on there, right? I need to be seen in the picture. I want to look like a silhouette. So because this form is not self-luminous, but Krishna's form is Aditya Varnam, it is self-luminous. Not only is it self-luminous like the sun doesn't need anything outside of itself to be seen. By its own power, it is visible. In the same way, Krishna's form is like that. And it also reveals other things as well. Tamasa parastat, and his form is transcendental. So you're supposed to think of Krishna like this, as a transcendental person, not as like some human being. Avajananti mamudha manusham tanum ashritam. Sometimes people think Krishna is ordinary human, so they deride him. So no, you don't think of Krishna like that. You think of Krishna like this. In the last verse, he says, Prayana kale. So therefore, if you do like this, and at the time of death, manasa achalena, with an unwavering mind, you're thinking of Krishna in this way. Bhakta yukto. Bhakta yukta means with bhakti or through bhakti, you're thinking of Krishna. Yoga balena chaiva, made strong by yoga. And yoga here means ashtanga yoga. Because if you want to think only of Krishna, you have to withdraw the mind from sense objects. Otherwise, you'll think of Krishna sometimes, you think of sense objects sometimes. Or maybe in our particular case, think of sense objects most of the time. And sometimes think of Krishna. So in order to do that, yoga should be applied. This is being indicated here. This is called Yoga Mishra Bhakti, where, okay, primary practice is devotional service, but let me mix it with yoga so that I can withdraw the mind from sense objects and then get it to focus on Krishna. So he said at the time of death, if you may have unwavering mind, by bhakti that is made strong through yoga. Then he mentions the yoga process here, meditating, Bhuvor Madhye Pranam Avesha Samyak, meditating on the space in between the eyebrows and so on. He mentions. He will elaborate on this a little bit more. Then Satam Param Purusham Upaita Divyam, then you will attain the Supreme Lord at the time of death. So this is his point. So the basic message is here to practice, think of Krishna, develop the habit of thinking of Krishna. Then you can know Krishna at the time of death. Otherwise not. Then you cycle of rebirth. So that is the passage. Well, there's 5 more verses in the passage that I only could take out because of time. Okay? So I have questions there. The printer wasn't working on Monday, so I couldn't print them today. So you can look at the first 2 sections that we've discussed these points. And you can take 5-10 minutes, and then at the end I'll take questions or a couple reflections.
This is 1 through 6?
Huh?
1 through 6?
1 through, in the second part also. You can answer most of the questions in the second part except for the last one. We've covered all the verses by which part 2. You can zoom in on part 2. Part 1 was from Monday. Part 2, you can mostly answer all the questions except the last one. Community group today? How's it going? So, any questions, comments? Otherwise, yeah.
Just to clarify, so in here it says the difference between yoga Mishra and Keva Bhakti.
Yeah, we didn't. That was the last verse. We didn't take that one yet. Well, we talked about Yoga Mishra Bhakti, but we didn't talk about verse 14 yet, which is the Kevala Bhakti verse. 9 through 13 is Yoga Mishra Bhakti, so we talked up to 10. So that's why I said that last question you'd not be able to answer. We'll cover that on Monday. Any other question? Otherwise, we'll take reflection. Okay, 2 reflections. Someone wants to speak up.
Something that stood out to me was the point you made that the only reason we remember, we think of certain things is because we formed a habit of thinking of those things, whether in previous lives or this life. And the only way we can combat that is to form a habit.
Yeah, easier said than done. Nice. Another, some, yes, reflection.
Really got me was that you said that having a feeling of spirituality is not really what spirituality is.
Yes.
It's not just a feeling.
Yeah.
It's more than that.
Should be based on some knowledge, actually,
Knowledge.
actual spiritual knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge. Say wisdom.
Yes. Just like you have, and especially nowadays in New Age spirituality and yoga groups and so on, they're always talking about this thing: follow your heart, follow your heart, follow your heart. But I'm like, I'm a fool and rascal. It's not a good suggestion. If I'm an enlightened person and you say follow your heart, that is a very good suggestion. But if you are a fool and rascal and I say follow your heart, what you will do, you'll do something foolish and crazy, devoid of principle, isn't it? Someone fellow is crazy and you tell him follow your heart. That's exactly what you don't want him to do. It's like in New York, we meet so many crazy people on the street. They're talking all nonsense in the corner. And then you don't go up to them and say, brother, follow your heart. Generally, you feel inspired. Let me call the psychiatric ward. We got a problem over here on first and second. So everyone is saying follow your heart, but that's some feeling is there, but they don't have any spiritual knowledge, so that's not a good suggestion. So we say follow your knowledge. Krishna said, Durena Hyavaram Karma Buddha Yoga Dhananjaya. Buddho Sharanam Avincha. He doesn't say take shelter of your feelings. He says take shelter of your knowledge. And if your feelings are congruent with your knowledge, then that is a good feeling. And your feelings are not congruent with your knowledge, and that is a bad feeling. That feeling will cause you destruction. I know this is counter to what we hear in the world today, where feelings are given so much currency, so much status. But actually, in Bhagavad-gita, the person who follows his feelings is called as a person who's having a weak heart. Hridaya, what is that? Durbhalayam. Hridaya Durbhalayam means a person who follows his feelings. It's called a weak-hearted person. Because it's easy to follow feelings. Anyone can do that. What is the difficulty in following feelings? You follow your feelings every day. I follow my feelings every day. You follow your, isn't it? It is hard to follow your knowledge. That is what is difficult. Because your knowledge will tell you not to do something, even though you feel like doing it. Your knowledge will tell you to do something, even though you don't feel like doing it. So following your knowledge is actually difficult. So someone who follows their feelings, that is called a weak-hearted person.
What is your perception of knowledge? Like, what would that?
Bhagavad-gita, whatever is spoken in Bhagavad-gita by Supreme Lord Krishna, or about Krishna, we have another literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, I could answer it very elaborately, but in short, that's knowledge means that which is uttered by the Supreme Lord himself. So someone is saying someone is saying my religion, God is speaking, and another one is saying this religion, God is speaking. And we also say same thing, Krishna is speaking only here. So you can look at what's being spoken by all the traditions, and then you understand who is actually God. Just line them up right next to each other, and then you will see what is superior. People don't like to do this because we have an egalitarian landscape, so everyone just assumes everything is equal. But I always say, do this exercise. Line up Bhagavad Gita next to Bible, next to Quran, and all these other literature. You'll see who is speaking superior thing. Then you'll know that Krishna is God. He is actually God. That which is uttered by Krishna is what we take as knowledge. And whatever everyone else is saying, it may or may not be knowledge. So since they are untrustworthy sources, better to reject all of them. Jordan Peterson and all these people are very popular. So they may be saying something that is very nice. It may or may not be knowledge, but we cannot be sure.
That's what I was thinking. Some people, you can say follow your knowledge, but then, some people get too infatuated with knowledge to where they become cold-hearted and they don't have compassion for one another. They just just think about numbers and just just think about things that aren't really of actual human being.
Yeah, by knowledge we mean Bhagavad-gita. And if someone follows spiritual knowledge, that will include all these wonderful things, qualities also. Not just number crunching. I know something, facts don't care about your feelings, and everyone's fighting like this now. Very popular. Everyone's so self-righteous on both sides. It's very disgusting. And even like, I agree with this person, but they're so nasty that I don't want to be identified with that sort of thing. So not like that. Nice. Daniel, you have anything?
I'd echo what Charles said. It's really important to form these new habits because it's really dangerous if you don't. I was just thinking about how dangerous it actually is.
Try.
Yes.
Yeah, may I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, if Krishna also controls our mind, right? So, at the moment when we die, he basically also guides us to remember him. And if he doesn't, maybe is this not the moment to remember him? Or he wants to teach us, like, for example, in your situation, because it's a very similar situation where you don't remember that, but you survive, so you have a chance to kind of sort more in the practice.
Yeah. Well, the soul is called as the Tatasa Shakti. That means the marginal energy. And I like how Vaishnaja put it. This means the soul is open to suggestion. He can either be on the spiritual energy side or the material energy side. So if he's on the material energy side, his mind is controlled by material energy. And if he's on the spiritual energy side, then his mind is controlled by the internal energy. So the conditioned soul's mind is not controlled by Krishna, at least directly. It's controlled by Maya. That's why he thinks with Maya at the time of death, and he gets a form of Maya in the next life. But if you've done a lot of bhakti and there's the ingress of the internal energy, more and more internal energy is coming in you. Just like if you stand outside in the sun, you become more and more hot. If you stand outside in the sun for 1 minute, you'll get a little warm. If you stand out for 5 minutes, you start to get a little hot. And if you stand out for an hour, it becomes very hot. So you keep yourself in bhakti for a long, long, long time, then all that internal energy will come into all your senses, mind, intelligence. Then your mind can be said to be controlled by Krishna at that time. Then spontaneously you will think of Krishna without even trying. So like that. It's not that Krishna is necessarily like, I like this guy, so all right, you can come to me. I don't know about you. You need a little bit more time. Like it's not exactly like that. So yeah. Final thing, because
What's the best way to serve Krishna?
that could be a very intricate question, but in short, you can chant his name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Come on, you're supposed to like chant along. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Come on, follow the tradition. These holy names of Krishna you've been hearing. You came yesterday for Tuesday night kirtan, so we were chanting Hare Krishna. You can sing it, you can hum it. We also do japa meditation, like with the mantra beats. So you can chant his holy name and you can hear about Krishna or hear from Krishna. So when we're hearing Bhagavad-gita, we're hearing from Krishna. And our main literature is called Srimad Bhagavatam, that is hearing about Krishna. So these, and then by this hearing and chanting, then you will smara, you will remember Krishna. So there are many ways you can practice Krishna consciousness, but out of all the different ways that are mentioned, these three are given most prominence: hearing, chanting, and remembering. So you can chant about Krishna, you can hear about him or from him, and you can remember him.
What if you do all these things, but you're not internally you're not a good person? Like you don't.
Then you'll become a good person. No one is irredeemable. Even the devil is redeemable. So that requires a little bit more philosophical context and so on. But there are many people who, as the saying goes, every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. So the process of Christian consciousness is so powerful, it can purify even the most sinful person. There would be no use of saying that God is all powerful if he cannot purify such a person.
What if it doesn't happen in your lifetime?
That's okay. Then it happened in the next lifetime. Why does everything have to be in this one life? So that is why this philosophy, not like the Abrahamic traditions where you one strike and you're out, one lifetime, and then if you didn't get it, then I hope you like hell. But and there are many lifetimes one may take to progress and get purified. That is okay. What is the loss? So there is no use in saying God is all powerful unless he can purify the most evil person. And there is no use of saying he's all merciful if you have to get it in one lifetime. I remember talking to a Christian boy like this one time, and I asked him, he was challenging me, and I asked him, is God supremely merciful? The most merciful person? He said, yes. I said, that means there must be reincarnation. So he got bewildered. I said, because how is it most merciful person that you take birth, you're in complete ignorance, and you got max 80 years, 90 years, max, maybe 100. And if you don't get it in that small period of time, then you're condemned to hell eternally. That doesn't sound like the most merciful person to me. That sounds like an absolute jerk. He's still absolute, but but an absolute jerk. So if the God is all merciful, then there's reincarnation. And it may take several lifetimes to be purified. That is okay. As long as you're moving in the right direction.
You think God is like, there's such thing as, you feel like God, such thing as tough love, where God actually puts you in these situations?
Definitely.
Purposely.
If you read Srimad Bhagavatam, we read about tough love in every chapter. Every chapter is a tough love chapter, where the Christians, devotees particularly, they are always in very heavy circumstances of life, usually. That was one of my first experiences reading the Bhagavatam. I'm like, I don't know if I want to become a devotee. It seems like the ones that are real dear to him get into a lot of trouble. Okay, I'll be a devotee, but I don't know how close I want to get, because the closer you get, it seems, the more tough love you seem to get. So you can read about that. That is okay. Of course, those who are very enlightened, who really are lovers of God, they don't even, it's not like tough love, it's just love. They're just lost in a whole different, we can't even imagine what is their conscious experience. But for those of us who are trying to become purified devotees of God, then for us, we experience it as tough love. We have Krishna will do things to help us become authentic devotees. Okay, Hariom Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Haribo.